Boogie down with reformed Dabo girl Chase Masterson as she takes you inside Discovery every week on the all-new Star Trek podcast, Disco Nights. From the producers of Inglorious Trexperts, wherever you listen to the 430 movie. And keep looking at the stars.
Hey, this is Mark A. Altman, and if you're a fan of Disco Nights, you'll love Inglorious Trexperts, the hit Star Trek podcast for Star Trek fans with a life. Join DAREN DOCHTERMAN and me every week as we take you inside 50 years of Star Trek and boldly go where no podcast has gone before. Available every Sunday at 17:01 hours wherever you listen to podcasts. Hey, this is Mark A. Altman, co-host of Inglorious Trexperts, and if you're a fan of Battlestar Galactica, and who isn't, check out my new oral history of Battlestar Galactica with Ed Gross, So Say We All. It spans the complete history of Battlestar Galactica from the 1978 series to Ronald Moore's brilliant reinvention and even Galactica 1980. Available from Tor Books wherever books are sold.
Back in the 70s and 80s, before the advent of VHS, chances are, if you saw a classic movie, it was on the 430 movie. With their famous theme weeks, it was a chance to see movies you never saw before and get reacquainted with some old classics. So now, join us for the 430 movie.
Hey, this is Mark A. Altman, and this is Sports Movie Week. Welcome back to the 430 movie. We got our expert programmers here to curate a fantastic week of sports movies for you. And I'm joined on the team by Stephen Melching.
Teamwork.
Teamwork. DAREN DOCHTERMAN.
All one.
And joining us once again, Ashley E. Miller.
There is no I in team, but if you rearrange the letters, it spells meat.
Swing and a miss.
Well, guys, I guess movies were always a great way to enjoy sports vicariously for those of us who are not athletes.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
that would be all of us.
I'm not a huge sports fan, but I do love sports movies.
Yeah, I'm weird like that too, because I understand the draw of sports, even though that gene just completely passed me by.
See, I had the opposite thing. My dad and my brother are huge sports fans.
Yes.
In fact, my dad had season tickets to the Rangers, and my brother was a huge Islander fan. And I would walk in, and my dad would have baseball game on TV, a hockey game on the radio, and read about football game in the newspaper. And so I hated sports. I just couldn't. I was like, I always joke, and this is true. Like growing up, my dad was president of Little League, and so we would go, be doing, having a cool day, doing something fun. And so I just got to stop by the field for a second. We stopped by, and they said, "Oh, Mike, the umpire didn't show up. Can you umpire a game?" I'm like, "What? I thought we were stopping by for a minute. Just one game. It'll be 2 hours."
Just one game.
And then, we finished the game, and I was like, "Okay, Dad, are we going?" And he go, "Oh, they need me to umpire the next game." I'm like, "What? What? What? I just want to go home." And I would start carrying
430 movie's gonna be on.
I would start carrying books around with me because I always knew no matter what he said, we'd end up at the field for 3 hours. And it wasn't even for my Little League games. I could understand, but for every other kid's Little League games, it was the worst.
See, I liked playing sports. I was pretty athletic when I was younger. I played especially soccer. I played a lot of soccer, and I was quite good at it. But when I moved into high school, it was in a small town, and there really weren't many sports to choose from.
Right.
And it was, football, which I'm not built to be a football player. Baseball, I tried. I wasn't good at it. I wasn't good at baseball. And track and field, and basketball. That was really all we had.
Well, it's funny, people who know Rob Burnett and my film Free Enterprise may remember the basketball scene where, the guys play basketball. They're absolutely horrible. I mean, and that actually is based on, we used to play basketball every week. And it was horrible because we'd go play basketball for exercise, and then we'd go to Taco Bell, for afterwards. So it sort of defeated the whole purpose. And then we wised
transformed.
up. And we started playing beach volleyball, which became a regular tradition for many, many years.
A good 10 years at least.
We played.
Every
we never got
Saturday.
better. We were always awful.
We were terrible.
But we played. And,
no, we got better. We got better. When we
better.
started, we played with 6 or 8 on a team.
Well, you and I were good.
Well, we were
pretty
okay.
good. We could spike, and we had great serves and stuff.
But it was fun. It was that competitive spirit. It's just fun to be outdoors with your friends.
In the volleyball game of the blind, the one-eyed man is brilliant.
Well, it's so fun. That's really funny.
Well, at the neighboring courts,
Yes.
there's literally Olympic trainees,
Next to us.
practicing.
Right.
And we're sitting there like,
I would always tell people, look for the really, good-looking guys who you're spiking the ball with their shirts off, and we're the guys next to them.
Yeah. Right.
That's how you can find us. And it was funny because after volleyball, we had a whole tradition. After volleyball, we'd then go to Cozy Mel's, the late lamented Cozy Mel's, where we'd have nachos and queso and clog up our arteries, but it was great. And then after that, we would then go to Toys R Us, which is also gone now, and go shopping for toys. And then we'd go to Best Buy, which is across from the Toys R Us. So it was a full meal. It was a full day of activity, and it combined all our passions. And sadly, those days have sort of...
I can't believe we did that almost every single Saturday. Probably
Virtually
about 45 Saturdays a year, unless it was raining or a major holiday.
Or super windy. Although there were a couple of times we went down there only to find out it was super windy and attempted to play, much to our chagrin. But
my only sport was competitive beer chugging. I once...
You letter in it?
Oh, yeah, I absolutely did. At Comic-Con a couple of years ago, I was hanging out at one of the hotels, and there's this very large Canadian actor who was there. And
William Shatner.
No. And Steve Basic. And Rod Roddenberry was there. And
I was close.
They were foolish enough to challenge me to a beer chugging competition.
Are you challenging me to a duel?
Exactly. And I utterly crushed them.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, utterly crushed them. And Steve, he's Canadian. Drinking beer is like the national pastime. He's like, how did that happen? I said, hey, man, I went to college in the United States of America.
Okay, so I got to ask you before we start Sports Week, favorite sport, favorite team? Darren?
It would have to be one of only two sport events that I've ever gone to, which was baseball at Wrigley Field with the Chicago Cubs, back before they had lights.
Sure.
And it was great. An afternoon in the fresh air, the friendly confines of Wrigley Field.
Yeah, right down the block from Portillo's.
That's correct.
Home of the Italian beef sandwich. Oh, man, I love my Portillo's. Okay. Mr. Steve Melching.
I didn't really have a team growing up. My dad was in the Air
around
Force.
so much.
Yeah, we moved around, and we lived in places that didn't have professional sports franchises, like Omaha. The closest thing was Kansas City, so you maybe had the Royals or the Chiefs. Ugh. And then we moved to Hawaii. Hawaii didn't have any professional sports. Then we moved to Virginia.
Hula hooping or
exactly.
Dancing.
Virginia had the Redskins. They didn't have the baseball team yet, the Nationals. And then we moved to Colorado, but we were kind of far away from Denver. And at the time, Denver just had the Broncos. They didn't have a baseball team yet. I guess they had the Nuggets. So
that sounds like a disease.
I was always the Nuggets. I got a bad case of the Nuggets. But I'd say I was kind of a lifelong fan of the Dodgers because my parents were both born in L.A. and my grandparents all lived in the L.A. area, and they were Dodger fans. So I kind of followed the Dodgers, and I still try to follow them when I can.
That's two big baseball votes for baseball, which some is a dying sport, and yet here it's very well represented. What about you, Ashley?
My sport is football. My family is originally from Western Pennsylvania, and so I bleed black and gold Pittsburgh Steelers.
Oh, okay. So vote for football. And I have to say, I've always been a baseball fan. I'm a Mets fan, long-suffering Mets fan. So, that's kind of my thing. I would go nowhere near hockey because my brother played ice hockey and I always had to go to his practices at 5 in the morning, and it pissed me off. But I would play, when he would go to Abe Stark Arena in Coney Island to practice, they had a Star Trek, the Klingon attack game. So
That's not a sport.
Well, yeah, it was for me. And I destroyed many Klingon cruisers over the course of my brother's hockey seasons. Okay, so this is Sports Week, and we're about to talk about the greatest sports movies. Well, no, actually, I shouldn't say that. Not the greatest sports movie. The movies that we want to curate for a sports movie week. And as Steve is very fond of pointing out, we're not programming the greatest movies of all time. We're programming
ones that we
the
enjoy.
perfect meal
ones we love.
that we enjoy, that we feel maybe in some cases overlooked.
We want to share
that
with
also blend together into a tasty souffle.
Right.
So,
Right. for example, like Cloak and Dagger goes with everything.
It's paired.
It goes with nothing except Dabney Coleman week. That's it.
And Henry Thomas week.
9 to 5.
Yes, Steve. So why don't you start us off, Steve? On Monday, it's strike one.
Yeah, it's funny. I like playing sports. I don't really like watching professional sports that much, but I do like sports movies. Like sports movies are just inherently dramatic. There's generally a big game or a season of games, and or a fight or a match or something, and it's that great drama of athlete against athlete or team against team, and if you have team sports or you have this interesting array of characters around them, and it can create a really wide variety of stories. My pick is a movie from 1977 called Slapshot.
Oh, excellent choice.
A hockey movie.
My brother will be very happy.
And I've never played hockey. Maybe a little floor hockey in high school gym class, but don't watch hockey. But I love this movie. It's directed by George Roy Hill, who, of course, directed Butch Cassidy Sundance Kid and The Sting. It was written by a woman, interestingly, a woman named Nancy Dowd, whose brother was a hockey player in the minor leagues in Pennsylvania, actually. And the screenplay was actually nominated for the WGA award. I learned as I.
What did it lose to? Annie Hall?
77. It was in the comedy category, so it might have lost to Annie Hall. But this movie stars Paul Newman, Michael Ontkean from Twin Peaks,
Yeah, of course.
Strother Martin, M. Emmett Walsh, Melinda Dillon, and Paul Dooley. Paul Newman plays the
Wrong podcast.
Paul Newman plays the player coach of this
Salad dressing.
the Charleston Chiefs, this failing minor league hockey team in this industrial town that's slowly dying away, and the big town factory is closing down, and the team fears that the team will be disbanded. The players fear the team will be disbanded, so they're kind of giving up hope, but they realize during a game that on-ice violence is attracting the crowd, and they feel if they can get enough crowd enthusiasm behind them that maybe the owner of the team will sell them and they can move to another city and continue playing hockey. So they recruit this trio of brothers from the Iron League, these thugs, these what they call them, goons, the brother. My God, I blanked on the name of the brothers.
You're always so prepared, Steve. How have you failed us?
I know. I can't believe they even have action figures.
It's one thing if I don't know what I'm talking about.
but only glad that I was here to see it.
The Hanson brothers, who are based on real brothers in hockey, and actually, two of the brothers are brothers, played by brothers in the film.
Perhaps you remember the band Hanson. It's
It's right there in front of me the whole time. But they initially resist playing these goons because it's an affront to the old time hockey, the real hockey that they want to play. And Michael Ontkean in particular is sort of doesn't want to go down into the gutter that way. But they realize that this is the only way they're going to save the team, so they end up playing these guys, and the games get bloodier and bloodier, and it's just a really fun movie. There's interesting plots with their wives and girlfriends, and you follow the team on their tour of what may be their last season, and to a really great game where the opposing team recruits all of these borderline criminals to bring these guys out of retirement to basically create this bloodbath on the ice. And it's just a really entertaining movie.
It's a great movie. It's so much fun. George Roy Hill is a wonderful director. Paul Newman is delightful in it. It's raunchy and
it's really gritty. It's got that 70s, rural Rust Belt dreariness to it. Grit.
Yeah. Totally. And it's great. And it's so funny because you say, oh, great hockey movies. It's a very short list. And, some people would say the Rick Moranis.
Luke, I'm your father, eh?
But Slapshot to me is the great hockey movie. I mean, you have a couple of things like Miracle about the Miracle on Ice and stuff, but I think when you say hockey movies, the thing that springs to mind is it's not Strange Brew, it's not Miracle, it's
thing is,
It's not the Mighty Ducks.
I actually
It's not the
haven't
Mighty Ducks,
seen
it's
Slapshot. You make me want to see it. But
Oh, you
I
like it.
love hockey movies. Like, I just love them. I don't know why. I think it's just because the action is different than anything else that you see. Just the way that everything moves on the ice.
And it's the way it's filmed is great because they're out there on the ice, like the camera operator is handheld skating. He's clearly skating around with them, and really these great low angles sweeping across the ice, following the
It's
players.
more like watching a dog fight than watching a sport.
And it's so violent. I mean, when you first kind of meet the Hanson brothers when they're getting ready for a game, they're in the locker room and they're like taping tinfoil to their knuckles in preparation of getting.
And it's funny. It reminds me that growing up, I had this massive VCR library. It was a combination of stuff I bought, a VHS, and then movies I taped off HBO. My brother had one VHS. It was Slapshot. It was the only movie he owned on, and I had this enormous library of tapes, that I bought, and Ira had Slapshot.
And it featured a song very popular. What's the title? It's All Right, Get Right Back Where We Started From.
Yeah.
It's kind of a running song throughout the movie. So
Great
Slapshot,
choice.
check it out if
Great
you haven't
way to
seen
start
it.
the
You
week.
might not have seen it because
I
it
can't
is
wait.
40 years old.
I'll give my report on Twitter.
Excellent.
Another great movie from 1977.
And there's a good Blu-ray of it out, by the way.
Okay, awesome.
Darren Dochterman,
Tuesday. Well, I'm my usual picks in these instances are sort of classic movies from when we were young, and that is the same thing today. The mythology of, particularly in America, baseball. Baseball Ray. It's not that movie. It has never been rendered, in my opinion, as epically or as poetically as this movie from 1984, Barry Levinson's The Natural.
God damn it, you did it again! Stop stealing my movies, Dochterman! Okay, I second the motion.
Yeah. So you like that one, huh?
I
What
love
else
The
you got,
Natural.
kid?
I love The Natural.
Da-da.
Oh, and that score! Oh my God, by Randy Newman.
Randy Newman's
so great.
Amazing score. It's every frame is beautiful. It was shot by Caleb Deschanel.
Yeah, the great cinematographer.
And it just looks gorgeous. There is a gauze over everything, but it's all as if it came out of mythology.
Mm-hmm.
And it is beautiful. Robert Redford is Roy Hobbs, who was a prodigy as a child. He was a great ball player. When he was younger, he was on a train with the character called the Whammer, which was a Babe Ruth stand-in. Yeah. And in a David versus Goliath moment, he strikes him out with 3 pitched balls. And at that moment, he gets targeted by this crazy woman who...
Barbara Hershey, right?
Barbara Hershey,
Yeah.
who's playing this character called Harriet Bird. And she basically... this is a spoiler, so if you don't want to hear, go away.
We'll wait.
Okay. Have you seen the movie now? Good. She does something that basically stops his career for 25 years. We rejoin him later when he's a much older man, starting out in the Bush Leagues as a rookie. And it's amazing. He has this bat that he made when he was a kid called Wonder Boy, and it's all as if it comes out of Greek mythology. It's symbolic and it's magical. And what happens during the film is great. See it. It is amazing, and it makes something that I really don't really care about, which is baseball. It makes me wish that I loved baseball.
So
I completely agree. I love it. You know, the national pastime baseball is our most mythological. It's imbued with the most mythology. It's the most epic of all our sports. You know, it harkens back. You know, like you said, but the natural captures all that. There've been more realistic baseball movies. There've been more, you know, steeped in reality. But what I love about it, it's a fable, it's a fantasy. Yeah. I mean, when he hits that home run and the lights are exploding, and you know, Caleb Deschanel is one of my favorite DPs of all time. You know, that score is amazing. I love that score. He did a couple of really great movie scores. He did Avalon after that, which is also great. But I had the same feeling. I like baseball probably more than any other sport, but I wasn't like a crazy baseball fan, but I am just crazy about that movie. Kim Basinger is great in it.
Darren McGavin.
It's a wonderful underdog story.
Robert Prosky.
Oh yeah. Darren McGavin is really great in that.
He's great.
Yeah.
He plays this really kind of shifty character. Robert Duvall is in it. He's great. As when I first saw it as a much younger man, I really enjoyed it. But certainly now, you know, in my later years, it has so much more weight and meaning to me now.
Well, that's because they say there are no second acts in Hollywood in life. And Roy Hobbs had a second act,
right?
And he was successful. He didn't give up. And everyone was poo-pooing and naysayers and said, you know, can't be done, and making fun. You know, who is this old man to think that he can play, you know, in Major League?
Yeah. Welcome to the majors, Mr. Hobbs.
And you know, it's remarkable. And I love that movie. It's beautifully directed by Barry Levinson. I can't say enough good things about it. I think it's a great choice.
We're 2 for 2, by the way, because I haven't seen The Natural either.
Really?
Wow.
Yes. So this is turning into the week where I actually need to be watching the movies that we are curating.
That's great.
I mean, I think it'd be awesome.
I mean that.
Yeah.
I think that's great, and I really want to see your reaction to these.
No, I'm excited, and I'm glad that you didn't spoil what Barbara Hershey does.
Yeah.
I'm assuming it's not like she burns his nuts off with like a toaster or something. So
that's exactly what happened. By the way, I'm looking at our Twitter feed, and Gentleman Roadie just posted. He's talking about our movies to be thankful for. Another great podcast. Hearing Ashley wax on about some of the underlying metaphors about Wizard of Oz reminded me of the way he used the reading of the book in the episode Goodbye to All from the Sarah Connor Chronicles. I really missed that show. Deep cut.
Very deep cut.
How about our fans? I love.
Are we certain that this Gentleman Roadie person isn't?
Isn't Zach his assistant in the back tweeting on?
No, that's awesome.
No, because Gentleman Roadie was a fan of the show before he hired Zach.
Wow.
So that's nice, isn't it?
That's very nice.
Yeah.
Makes me happy, actually.
Oh,
and you know, and speaking of The Natural, I hadn't seen it until about 8 or 10 years ago. I was well aware of it, but for some reason, one of those movies that just slipped through the cracks. I just missed it, and I remember Darren was talking about it, and that inspired me to buy it on disc and watch it. And I agree, it's terrific.
I mean, you know, there's great stories like Casey at the Bat, you know, like these legendary baseball stories, and you know, and the stories of Babe Ruth, who were these larger than life characters. And I just love the fact that this is a baseball movie that takes place on this canvas that's larger than life. And Robert Redford, you know, is just so wonderful in it because he's Americana.
Yeah.
You know, and it's a great movie. I can't recommend it enough. If people like Ashley who haven't seen it, they should absolutely, even if you're not a baseball fan, it's a really wonderful film. And that brings us, speaking of, maybe you can recommend a film you did see for Wednesday.
I was going to continue the pattern and recommend something I haven't seen. Actually, you know, it's funny that it's weird, Gentleman Roadie's tweet, because he mentioned me waxing on, but he left part of that sentence out. Waxing off, which you have to say very carefully, because my entry for this week, for Sports Week, was one of my very favorite movies when I was a kid. I rented that movie over and over and over again. I watched it pretty much on infinite loop. And I could still watch it that way today. It was one of my great pleasures sharing that movie with my 9-year-old, who thought there might have been a little too much love stuff.
But
But
my 9-year-old.
The Karate Kid.
Oh, yes.
Part 2.
Directed by John Avildsen, who directed Rocky, and it has that sort of Rocky vibe. It follows Daniel LaRusso from New Jersey, who comes out to Los Angeles. I think he moves to Reseda.
Oh, he does.
Yes, he does. He's from Reseda.
Living in Reseda.
And he quickly discovers what a different world the Valley can be. He falls in love with the radiant and luminous Elizabeth Shue. And he runs afoul of somebody I think that in retrospect we all appreciate more and more, especially now, Billy Zabka, William Zabka, who, 30 years later, completely...
Oscar-winning.
Did he win an Oscar?
For a short film, I believe.
Did he really?
Yes.
God bless him. Because that guy, like in Cobra Kai, which is the ultimate Karate Kid sequel, is amazing. But
by the way, yes, absolutely. Cobra Kai is fantastic. Sorry.
It's a totally great show. And the point of all this is that Billy Zabka and his a-hole friends are all part of this like really nasty dojo called Cobra Kai, and they do like the All Valley Karate tournament every year. And Daniel like thinks that he knows karate because he read it in book, and he gets his ass handed to him. But he's saved by the gardener at his apartment complex, Mr. Miyagi, who did win an Oscar that year for playing Pat Morita, who did win an Oscar for playing that role. And their relationship is so wonderful. And what's great about the movie is it's not just about, and this kid learns karate and then he uses a super move at the end and he wins. It's also about...
He wins.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert.
Thanks,
spoiler
Ashley.
alert. LaRusso wins.
Well, I mean, look, in Rocky doesn't win, so you don't know.
There's a chance that he might not.
Daniel LaRusso's going to fight?
Yeah. Look, that whole third act is amazing. And
he just loved that Mako was in it from Conan.
Yeah, I totally do. But look,
it's not. It's Pat Morita.
No, Mako isn't in it.
It's not.
Oh, my
Mako's not in it. He loved that Mako wasn't in it. From Conan.
I was so
Pat
happy
Morita
Mako
from
wasn't in
Happy
that
Days.
movie. But no, my favorite scene in that movie is the simplest. Daniel is trying to get his head around Mr. Miyagi and kind of what makes this guy tick. And we kind of learn some things about him, that he's Japanese American, his family was pulled into an internment camp, lost everything. And there's just this moment where Daniel, comes across him. He's been drinking, not Daniel, Mr. Miyagi's been drinking, and he's at the shrine, for his family. And you just realize all the loss this man has experienced. And you realize what Daniel means to him. Mm-hmm. And it's this transformative moment in the story, because that's really the moment that Daniel just sort of surrenders to the teaching and understands what it is that Mr. Miyagi is giving him, and understands what this movie is about. And that's the moment that I think that Daniel earns his victory in the third act. And it's so moving. It's so great. It's so well made. And it had a bunch of crappy sequels. Well, I kind of like Karate Kid too. But
you like the next Karate Kid with Hilary Swank?
Not really. I just none of them hit it for me, in the way that first movie did. Yeah. But again, I love Cobra Kai, and if you have not seen Cobra Kai, you could not watch Karate Kid and still get Cobra Kai. It's such a great show.
Yeah, Cobra Kai is the sequel that we never really knew we wanted and never thought could happen. It's just a perfect sequel to the Karate Kid that reunites some of the original cast and reprising their roles and brings in a new generation. It's absolutely fabulous. I think the second season, as we're recording this, is in production. It might be out by the time. Or maybe close to it coming out.
And it's weirdly very quotable.
Oh my God, it's endless. You mean the Karate Kid, the movie?
Yeah.
Endlessly quotable. I quote it all the time.
Sweep the leg.
Get him a body bag. Yeah. Oh, wax on, wax off.
If done correctly, is no defense.
Don't know. Never been attacked by a tree. I mean, so many great lines.
There is no fear in this dojo. Yeah.
Yes, sensei. I was it's one of the first thing I thought when I started dating the woman that became my wife. She lived in Reseda, and of course the first thing I thought is Reseda. That's the home of the Karate Kid. And our house is about 2 miles from the LaRusso apartment building, and I drive past it all the time when I go to Five Guys for to get a hamburger.
People are triangulating your actual location right now, so be careful.
You just doxed yourself.
Here comes the Twitter feed now. We like it when Steve Melching
Gentleman
walks in
Roadie
front of
has
the
some
window.
things he's going to address with you in person.
I was a teenager when that movie came out. It felt a little corny to me at the time when I saw it, but I still liked it. And there was something about it that kept drawing me back. And I, like Ashley, I always watched that movie over and over again on tape, or I got the laser disc, have it on Blu-ray. It's just
Super 8.
Super 8, Viewmaster. It's just a great feel-good movie. Great characters, great relationships between master and student, and also the with Elizabeth Shue and just a tremendous fun movie.
Yeah, no, it's great, and it's again iconic. So much that we remember in dialogue, and it's a great movie for if you have kids, show them, and has a great
great
message,
lessons. Yeah,
great lessons. It's a delightful film. That brings us to Thursday. And I literally changed my pick in the midst of this podcast.
Something else I haven't seen.
Well, I think you might have seen this because there's so many legendary athletes that have been the subject of films, whether it's Gary Cooper as Lou Gehrig. There's all these the story of Miracle on Ice. We talked about that, the Mighty Ducks. But perhaps there's no more worshipped and justly lauded athlete than the great Jonathan E., the star of Rollerball. And that was going to be my pick. Rollerball, which is a Norman Jewison film.
He's doing it again, folks.
But no, that was going to be my pick, and I'm changing it. No, I'm not. I have one film that I've decided on, and I don't know where it came from. Because it was not on my list. No, well, that was my pick. That's why I'm a little thrown off my game here because I had The Natural, then it was going to be Rollerball, but this is my pick. Are you ready?
Nope.
Lay it on us.
Heaven Can Wait.
That's great, because I had that on my alternates. Absolutely.
Oh, did you?
Yes, I did.
That's so funny.
Yeah, it's right here.
Okay, Heaven Can Wait. Warren Beatty plays this pro football player.
Joe Templeton.
Joe Templeton.
Love it.
Directed by the great Buck Henry.
Yep.
And it's a remake of Here Comes Mr. Jordan. James Mason plays
Mr. Jordan.
Mr. Jordan.
Can we hear from James Mason?
Mr. Templeton, unfortunately there's been an accident and your body doesn't really exist anymore.
So Warren Beatty is killed. He was not supposed to be killed. Basically, he got swiped out by an angel who wanted to spare him, Buck Henry, the agony of being killed in a car accident, but he would have survived. And so now they need to find a new body for him. And he's put in the body of this ne'er-do-well multimillionaire whose wife, Diane Cannon, I believe,
Yes.
is having an affair with Charles Grodin, and they want to kill this guy. So meanwhile, all he wants to do is buy the football team and get put on the team by his old coach, Jack Warden.
Right.
And meanwhile, they're trying to kill him. It is so funny and so charming. It is this beautiful love story with Julie Christie and a very melancholy ending, which I won't spoil. Mm-hmm. But what's so wonderful is when he's trying, I mean, they all think he's insane because they all see him as this old multimillionaire guy. And, when he convinces Jack Warden that it's really him.
Oh, my God.
It's such a great scene. And I just love Heaven Can Wait. I saw it in the same theater as Star Trek The Motion Picture. 1978, I believe.
I think it was 77. I think it was 77.
Okay, I think we're going to have to go to IMDb.
78 sounds right to me. But then again, I haven't actually seen this movie.
What? Excellent.
I have to say,
Have you?
3 for 3.
Oh,
I
Jesus.
haven't
Wow.
Oh, my God. This is a new record for us.
It's absolutely.
Yeah.
We're
You've
going
got
to
a
lose
lot of
our
work ahead of you.
Yes, I
certainly
do.
aware-
I'm actually excited.
I remember the comic book ads for this movie
Right.
in the back page of the comic book.
1978.
Oh, there you
Yeah,
go. Okay.
so
I was
I
right.
I'm aware. I know of it, and now with this this double recommendation.
Oh, it's so great. It's so charming. It's so fun. Warren Beatty's great in it. You know, and unpretentious.
Everyone's great. Jack
in it.
Warden is awesome in it. And
it's so much fun. And you know, it's a sports movie because you know, he played on a football team. He buys a football team. He's trying to get back on
the LA Rams.
It's the LA Rams, yeah. And it is
Again.
It's just great. It's just great. It's old-fashioned 70s, fun, really smart. Buck Henry is great in it and directing it. And that's why
Henry directed it. That's
I
why
literally
I love Buck Henry.
was all about going with Rollerball, you know, because it had Pamela Hemsley in it and John Houseman, a lot of people I love, and you know, I really like Rollerball. I mean, I wasn't just being funny, like, oh, it's Sports Week, I'm going to nominate Rollerball.
It's usually my job.
But you're right, exactly. I'm surprised you missed out on that opportunity. And,
I just love Karate Kid too much.
Actually went full on wholesome.
I don't know where Heaven Can Wait came from.
I think Warren Beatty did some directing on Heaven Can Wait.
Yeah, I think he did too. I think he did too. And well, you know, what movie that Warren Beatty, he's such a control freak, did he not?
Exactly.
You know, so I just love Heaven Can Wait. And like I said, it was nowhere on my list. It just suddenly popped into my head when we were talking. And
as if an angel.
Yeah, seriously, I just love that movie. It's another movie that was extremely popular at the time it was released. It's not talked about a lot now.
Yeah.
And they remade it with Chris Rock many years later. It's not very good. And if you have a chance, Paramount put it out on Blu-ray. It's available for streaming. Absolutely check it out because it's a lovely, fun movie.
There you go.
But boy, do we have so many possibilities for Friday.
Yeah.
So many.
Well, to that I say, well, we're waiting.
Solar Babies?
Oh, come on. Nobody gets this.
Ashley didn't see it.
The best. I didn't see it. What was it?
Caddyshack.
Oh, shit.
Oh, yeah.
Yes,
Oh, my
Caddyshack.
God.
Oh, my God. Such a good pick.
Yeah.
Have you heard or read, like, the Caddyshack, like, the behind-the-scenes? I listened to it on
I just
an
read the
audiobook.
book. That book. Yeah,
It's awesome.
I read it last summer. It's terrific. Yeah. But this book is like the making of Caddyshack.
Yeah.
It's
Caddyshack's
really
great.
interesting. It gets into the whole history of the National Lampoon and all the different figures that came in and out of there. And
It's weirdly tragic.
Yeah. It's sad. Really sad.
Ted Knight, I mean, is so great in that movie.
Every performance, it's just iconic, you know, and just you reading how that movie came together was such a fiasco. And
was it a success when it came out? Because I know now it's a beloved cult movie.
It was a
but
disaster when it came out. The reviews were terrible, and the box office was worse. Everybody thought
they thought they were making the next Animal House, which was a monster hit, and
it just was nothing. And I mean, so many great stories like from that book, like how they added all the stuff with the gopher at the last second.
And it feels that way, though.
And got rid of all the, the caddies.
Yeah.
Basically.
Totally.
They cut down the caddy story and played up all the stuff
Bill Murray
with
and the
with
gopher.
Bill Murray
That's funny.
and Rodney Dangerfield.
But they didn't
and
move
Chevy
the
Chase.
bodies.
Well, they just they didn't really have a script, finished script, and they just kind of were ad-libbing, and they thought they could do no wrong. They had this hubris about them that of course we're going to make the next monster hit comedy, and
that's interesting.
It's Harold Ramis's first directing feature.
I gotta read that book.
It's really interesting.
Politics, like between Chevy Chase and Bill Murray.
Oh my God, yeah.
Like just wow.
Yeah, because Chevy wants to prove he's funnier than Bill, which will never happen in this lifetime or the other. Although
he is good in the movie. I love him in Caddyshack.
He is. Look, I love him in Foul Play.
Yeah.
Speaking of great
and Vacation,
from the 70s.
I like him in Vacation.
Yeah, I know.
Too.
It's just unfortunately he's his own worst enemy from all accounts, right?
Yeah.
I thought he was immensely.
And also
funny.
Bill Murray is probably the funniest person.
The
alive.
great Cindy Morgan.
Oh yes.
Yes.
A moment, please.
Sartron.
Our beloved Cindy Morgan. Hallowed be her name.
And other things.
Yes.
Oh my.
I mean, look, there's so many. I said I love hockey movies. If you haven't seen it, and you might not have, Sean William Scott is effing amazing in Goon.
Goon, yeah.
Goon is, and Liev Schreiber is so great.
That killed a pilot of ours.
Did it really?
Yeah,
I'm
we had a
sad
hockey.
about that, but I'm glad that the movie exists because that movie was just so good. And Liev Schreiber is amazing.
Oh.
There's this electric scene between him and Sean William Scott. And I know it sounds insane that I'm saying there's an electric scene with Sean William Scott, but he's great in this movie.
I like Sean
I
William
like him
Scott.
too.
I'm glad you do, because I love Sean William Scott.
I do
and
too.
The Rundown, he's amazing.
Oh, the Rundown's hilarious.
It's not a sports movie, but I love Sean William Scott. But The Goon is a great movie, basically about a bouncer who loves hockey, who basically gets pulled onto this kind of minor league hockey team to be the Goon, as you sort of mentioned in Slapshot. And it turns out he's great at it. He is a metric badass, and he can take a punch. And they structure the whole thing less like a hockey film and more like a fight film, more like Rocky. Like when the third act is coming up, the conflict isn't really, well, these two teams are going to face each other on the ice. It's like, no. Sean William Scott and Liev Schreiber are going to get into a fist fight on the ice. We know that, and who's going to walk away?
Well, since the Super Bowl's this weekend, I thought I should mention a football movie.
Black Sunday.
Oh, that's really funny. That's really funny. John Frankenheimer's terrorist thriller.
Based on the
Black
Thomas
Sunday.
Harris novel.
That was not what I was going to mention, but about the dirigible menacing the Super Bowl.
2-minute warning.
No, I wasn't going to say
Fail
that either.
safe.
Okay.
No, I wasn't going to say
kidding.
that either. Say, inch by inch, we fight for that inch. It's Al Pacino giving an unhinged, over-the-top performance in Any Given Sunday. Last week we talked about the overheated performances in
The Doors.
In The Doors. Well, this week it's Any Given Sunday, in which Oliver Stone turns football up to 11, and it's just this operatic insanity. And I love Any Given Sunday.
I liked it too.
I
I've only
love
seen
that
it once,
movie.
but I liked it.
And weirdly, you're reminding me how much I kind of secretly, maybe guilty pleasure, love The Last Boy Scout. which is basically about sports betting, and opens with this amazing scene where you've got a running back who is desperate to kind of get his touchdown. So desperate, he pulls out a gun and he starts shooting defenders so he can get it. It's bananas. Shane
that
Black.
was $1 million script because of that teaser.
Yeah,
That's right.
I have a couple.
Yeah.
Here
You do not.
that I was thinking of. One, David S. Ward's Major League.
Oh, yes.
Sure.
Absolutely.
which
Charlie Sheen.
Charlie Sheen. It's a guilty pleasure of mine because it's not a great movie.
No, it's a
but
good
it's
movie.
a
It's
fun
fun.
movie.
It's fun.
Yeah.
It's a lot of
Good
fun,
comedy.
and there's so many great turns in it by all these great actors. And it's just so much fun. And watching the Cleveland Indians fight to survive when they're about to be sold is just so much fun.
Yeah, I really like Aaron Sorkin's wrote Moneyball.
Yes, I
Moneyball
love
years ago.
Moneyball.
I just think
It's a great movie about math.
it's a great
Surprisingly
entertaining movie
entertaining,
about
yeah.
math. Brad Pitt's terrific in it. Jonah Hill is great in it. And back when he was Zoftig, and it's a terrific movie. It's really interesting about how. We talk about mythologizing baseball with Field of Dreams and The Natural. I don't think we even talked about Field
We
of
haven't
Dreams.
talked about it.
but,
It's on my list, though.
But Moneyball is the reality. It's the hangover after the myth.
What does he do?
And
What's the line? What does he do?
I've only seen it once.
You have? Oh my God! He gets on base. That's the whole point of Moneyball. That the premise is that Brad Pitt is basically
The on-base
he
percentage.
is drafting people and trading for people, not because they have amazing stats, but because they have really consistent stats about getting on base. And his theory is you get a bunch of these guys together, and the math just works in your favor. You will just start bringing runs in.
Just
You
push
don't
him
have-
around the
It's
bases.
awesome.
Yeah.
Well, for a movie that represents the business side of sports, Jerry Maguire.
Yeah, that's true.
oh yeah, that's a
The
great.
things we think but do not say.
That's right.
Jerry Maguire is great, and it's also a great movie about. There's a Hollywood aspect because, of course, it's about sports agent,
Right.
Which is so interesting, and how these people are commodities, and you think you're their friends, and then suddenly you stop earning for them, and you're not, or vice versa.
Yeah,
you start earning a
exactly.
lot, and you're
Show me the money.
Yeah.
show me the money. God, I can't mention this because it was a miniseries for ESPN, so it doesn't count. But The Bronx is Burning, based on the great nonfiction novel. It's about New York in the summer of '77 when the Yankees were basically, all the drama between Billy Martin and Reggie Jackson as they were trying to make the pennant. Meanwhile, Son of Sam was terrorizing New York. The blackout, the mayoral race with Ed Koch against A. Beam and Bella Abzug and Mario Cuomo. It was like. It's everything I remember about
And
my
Star Wars.
childhood And Star Wars. It's like 1977 was like that year, and like if you're from New York, it was like this. They did such a great job,
And they were shooting Superman.
and they were shooting Superman. And it was, like, it was all there, and so the Bronx is Burning. It combines sports and movies and politics, and I love that. But unfortunately, it's a miniseries, so I can't mention it.
But if we could, let's talk a little bit about Field of Dreams.
Oh, we have
We have to, right?
Because it's, again, another sort of mythic. It's, you could also consider it a time travel movie.
You could.
Yeah,
Because it has such. It's not really a baseball movie. It's a fantastical movie. It's a fantasy movie. But I just love it. There's so many great parts in it. Kevin Costner is amazing.
Well, it's a great story about fathers and sons as well.
It is. It is heart ripping. To even if you'd never wanted to play catch with your dad, it's wonderful. It's a wonderful story.
James Horner,
film.
wonderful score.
It's great.
James Earl Jones gives a great,
So great.
Oh my God.
comedic,
So
dramatic
great
performance.
in that
Playing
film.
basically this 60s writer who is trying to get away from his past and is finally brought back by Kevin Costner's character.
Well, if we're talking about Kevin Costner in baseball,
Well,
Golf.
Old Durham.
or Thor.
Okay. Yeah.
And also Tin Cup, but which is
Yeah. I
Women
like
do
Tin
not
Cup.
get woolly.
right. And now all of a
weary.
sudden we're in Ron Shelton land, and like white men can't jump.
Yeah. No, I mean, Ron Shelton was the king of the sports movie. I mean, Bull Durham is phenomenal. Criterion just came out with the Blu-ray on Criterion. But yeah, and Ron Shelton did Blaze, but he did Tin Cup also, didn't he?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, which is a great movie
like
about
Tin Cup,
golf.
yeah.
And I'm not interested in golf unless it's Goldfinger and James Bond playing. Another great baseball movie, The Bad News Bears.
Yes,
Yes.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I love that movie.
The
That was
original Bad
my
News Bears.
second choice, but I also kind of like Bad News Bears Go to Japan.
I like Breaking Training. Let them play. Let them play. Pride of the Yankees with Gary Cooper is a great baseball movie. You mentioned Field of Dreams. I think that year was also John Sayles' 8 Men Out.
Yeah.
About
Yes,
the
that's
Black
correct.
Sox scandal, which is, he had a tight budget, but there's a lot of great stuff, and it's such a great story.
And we've tripped over it a couple times. Rocky.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Rocky, of course.
We didn't even get to. I mean, you talk about sports movies.
Yeah.
Rocky, Raging Bull.
Raging Bull.
I mean,
Right.
boxing is such fertile ground. It's gladiatorial.
Yeah.
It's the ultimate sports movies, and you go from the Academy Award winning heights of Rocky, and that was a transformative franchise because then you get to the comic book that is Rocky 3, and it's just as great.
Right.
My prediction for the fight.
Hey.
I Rocky I had seen, but I had never seen any of the sequels until fairly recently.
Really?
And I just watched them all in a short period of time. And I liked Rocky 2.
Rocky 2 is good.
It was a great twist on it about how he was dealing with the fallout from the first film.
No, Rocky 2 is good.
Rocky 3, like you said, turns into this cartoon, but it's so entertaining.
It's so entertaining.
and then Rocky 4 gets even crazier.
Rocky
Yeah.
3 is the unsung classic of
Yeah.
1982 because we talk about the legends of 82, Blade Runner, E.T., Star Trek 2,
Poltergeist,
Tron, all that
yeah.
stuff. But Rocky 3 was 1982 also,
Yeah.
another classic from 1982.
The Eye of the
How
Tiger.
insane is it that? Yeah, and we also, if we're talking about sports movies, boxing movies, sequels to Rocky, Creed, and then
Creed is
Creed 2 is
fantastic.
a goddamn sequel to Rocky 4. What?
That's insane.
What
I can't
reality are we living in?
It's
But
insane.
we're skipping over Rocky Balboa
Is
fantastic.
great.
Yes.
Yep, you're
Rocky
right.
Balboa is great.
And it's being forgotten because of how
How
wonderful
good Creed is, yeah.
Yeah.
But
That's a
don't
good point.
forget Rocky Balboa.
Rocky Balboa, he is reinvented. And when people, because after Rocky 5, and I would argue after Rocky 4, that franchise was dead.
Yeah.
I mean, people forget because
Who knew it had so much mileage left in
Oh
it?
my
They
God!
got
'Cause
at
Rocky
least
4 is
3
terrible.
great films.
There's a 20-minute training montage of clips from other movies to fill it out to its meager 70-minute running time. But it's amazing what Stallone did with Rocky Balboa, and then now what Ryan Coogler did with Creed, and as a producer on Creed 2, it's just. Who would have thought that was a franchise?
It came out of nowhere, and I loved it. And as we're recording this, Creed 2 is about to come out in theaters. I'll be there opening weekend. Really looking forward to that.
Now, we didn't talk about Solar Babies, which is our dystopian sports movie.
Rollerball isn't?
Well, Rollerball is too, I guess. And Rollerball is a much better movie. Solar Babies is unwatchable.
Yes.
Um,
Gleaming the Cube.
There's
Gleaming
there's
the
a
Cube.
few a string of sports comedies we could mention.
Sure.
The Ballad of Ricky Bobby, Talladega Nights.
Dodgeball. I
Yeah.
like
Dodgeball.
dodgeball.
And
Kingpin.
dodgeball.
Kingpin.
Yep.
A League of Their Own.
Right?
Yeah.
Aw, I like Elite. Apparently there's no enthusiasm in baseball either.
Dodgeball has Shatner in
Just for
it.
that.
Dodgeball has Shatner in it, which makes it great. Ben Stiller and Shatner. So, and Rip Torn is so funny.
so
You can
great.
dunk a wrench. You can
Dunk a ball.
dunk a ball. It's just like dodge a ball. It's really fun. That's a movie that sounded misguided in every respect. And then you watch it and it's really fun.
L for Love.
You know what's a funny comedy you may not remember? I used to watch on the 4:30 movie.
Yeah.
Every year, every spring. Ray Milland, and It Happens Every Spring. And this is where he put like this tonic on baseball. He's a scientist, so he was unhittable. So he becomes this major league sensation, sort of like Roy Hobbs, but the comedy version as a pitcher. And then one day somebody uses the tonic by accident on their hair. So he runs out of the tonic that he puts on the ball. So now he's going to have to pitch for real without having his secret.
But I want to see the movie about the dude with frictionless hair. What's that like?
It was charming. Now, I haven't seen it in many, many years. It probably doesn't hold up, but I always loved watching that every spring, as pitchers and catchers were coming back and getting ready for the beginning of the baseball season. It's one of those, things you look back at. To me, it was like the Miracle on 34th Street of the baseball season.
I'm going to throw another one out. Breaking Away.
Oh my God, Breaking Away is so
How
great.
we missed that? Robin Douglas from Galactica 1980.
Another one I haven't seen.
From the directors.
Breaking
of
Away is
Krull.
really-
high on my list. of
Breaking
things
Away
to
is really
see.
good,
Yeah.
and it's much better than Krull. And Dennis Christopher's in it, who played
And it
a
also has
Jemadar, I
things that
think.
spin around. Except it's bicycle wheels, not cool weapons.
He played a Vorta, Dennis Christopher, I think.
Did he really?
Yeah, so. But Breaking Away is a really good.
Jackie Earle
I mean, it's a really great movie about competitive bicycle racing.
Right.
Wait, was that Jackie Earle Haley in Breaking Away? And who was
And
also
Bad News
in Bad
Bears.
News Bears?
Bad News Bears, yeah.
It's Jackie Earle Haley week.
I remember a couple years ago he was like in everything again.
Yeah.
Like he suddenly made this huge comeback, and like he was in everything.
And then he wasn't.
Don't forget Rudy
Yeah,
Rudy.
can't forget Rudy.
or Hoosiers.
Oh God, yeah. Wasn't that that was that incredible year
86,
for
yeah.
Dennis Hopper,
Yeah.
where he was in Blue Velvet
Yeah.
and Hoosiers.
Yeah. Right.
Could not imagine two more disparate roles.
And
than
then
that.
River's Edge
River's
after
Edge,
that.
yeah. Oh my God.
Chariots of Fire.
Oh, yeah.
Oscar winner.
Chariots of Fire.
Best Picture.
Nigel Havers, who for I think, am I wrong, that for 10 minutes when Geneviève Bujold crapped out on Voyager,
Yeah.
they nearly cast Nigel Havers as a male captain
Yes.
on that show.
That's right. That's right. I think we should do the rest of the podcast in slow motion.
Dun, 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 dun.
I was
Chariots
so
of Fire.
furious when that Tangella score beat John Williams' Raiders of the Lost Ark for the Oscar
I still am
that
furious
year.
about that.
I mean, I like that song. I don't
Fine.
know.
It's no
It's
Raiders of the
fine.
Lost
I
Ark.
know.
But then again, remember when A Little Romance beat Star Trek: The Motion Picture? There was no justice in Mudville. It's like, oh my God.
The Wrestler.
Oh yeah,
Oh,
Mickey
that's
Rourke's
terrific.
big comeback film. That was, by Dennis Aronoff.
Yeah.
His little brother,
By,
Dennis.
by
He's trying to be a movie director.
Darren the Menace Aronofsky.
And as a movie, like Friday Night Lights was an okay movie, but it spawned a television series that was phenomenal. And I really don't care that much about football, especially high school football,
Right.
and I don't really care that much about high school drama
And I don't really care about Texas.
or Texas. But the movies is good. The TV show is fantastic. If you haven't seen Friday Night Lights,
I
check
would
it out.
completely second that motion. I'm not a huge fan of the Peter Berg movie, but the TV show is phenomenal.
Yeah.
It's phenomenal. And it's a subject you wouldn't think as you said,
No,
would be interested in high
totally
school football.
gripping.
It
Went a little bit off the rails in season 2. They
but they
realized
get
it
back
and they
on-
course corrected.
Oh my God,
And,
that
it
show
finishes
until the
well.
end is brilliant.
Brian
Unlike
Saw.
another sports TV show, Bay City Blues, which was Stephen Bochco's baseball show after Hill Street Blues with Sharon Stone, young Sharon Stone, who gave me this pen. And
Second prize, a
there's-
set of steak knives.
there's so many great sports movies. I mean, I think we've mentioned a lot of them. We've probably missed some, and we invite our audience to share
Remind
with us.
us,
But we're going to have to decide what that Friday movie is. And we've heard all the. I'm kind of leaning towards Rocky.
Yeah, I think I am too.
Yeah, that's a good one.
It's a good week for John
and,
Avildsen.
and especially since yes,
Have
Yes!
we ever had, other than in a director, like a Spielberg week, a director repeat in the same week?
I
I don't think we
I
have.
don't think so. And we've certainly never had as many films that Ashley has never seen before.
That's
No.
for sure. Ashley has some homework to do
Yes,
this
I
weekend.
do. I'm actually really excited about that.
And I'd like to know, by the time this episode goes live or drops, as the kids say, why we'd love you to put on Twitter what you actually think of these movies that you haven't seen. Maybe you can see them by the time the episode. It's going to air Super Bowl weekend. It's going live Super Bowl
I will
weekend.
do exactly that.
That'd be great. Okay, so Monday,
Monday was Slapshot.
Tuesday,
The Natural.
Wednesday,
The Karate Kid.
Thursday, it's not Rollerball, it's Heaven Can Wait, and Friday, it's
Dun, 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 dun,
Rocky.
dun. Go the distance with Rocky.
Gonna fly now, but we gotta fly now. So we may have to fly now, but we'll be back next Friday with an all-new episode of the 4:30 Movie, wherever you listen to podcasts. Meanwhile, we hope you'll check out our sister shows, Inglorious Trexperts, the Ultimate Star Trek Podcast with host DAREN DOCHTERMAN, and Disco Nights, a celebration of Star Trek Discovery featuring host Chase Masterson and her special guests. Meanwhile, if you want to check out previous episodes of the 4:30 Movie or purchase some of our great 4:30 Movie logo wear, check out 430movie.com or suggest future theme weeks or tell us how we screwed up at Twitter or on Facebook or even on YouTube at 430 Movie. And if you're feeling really generous, go to Apple Podcasts and give us 5 stars. Not 1 star, not 2 stars, not 3, not 4. 5 stars. That's all that people care about. Nobody wants to hear, I don't think it was perfect this week. I think it was pretty good. I think I'll give it 4.5. No, just give us 5 stars. Just be generous. That's what we need, 5 stars. Don't
1
break.
star for each of us and then 1 to grow on.
Exactly.
5 days in the week, 5 stars.
That's right.
5 days
Star
in
to steer
4:30
by.
movie.
And finally, a very special thanks to everyone here at Electric Studios, our wonderful Bill Ritter, who makes it possible, Natalie, who's doing an amazing job producing the show. And until next week, on behalf of Stephen, Ashley, DAREN, and myself, you're out of here. Thanks for joining us for the 4:30 Movie. Eyewitness News starts now.
This week's episode is brought to you by Mega Dodo Productions, publishers of the Encyclopedia Galactica and the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Don't panic!
This podcast is a production of the Electric Surge Network.